Hey there, internet friends. Trevor Starkey here with another episode of AC Discovery, my weekly anime and comics show where I sit down and talk about anime and or comics on Saturdays. This episode's going to go up early Sunday morning because I got wrapped up finally finishing the Destiny 2 raid. Yay! And so I just didn't have time to get to my subject until late Saturday night, but whatever. Still counts because I'm not going to bed until this is posted. So today, because I've spent the last 2-3 months on Death Note, that anime, I decided it was time to get back to reading some comics. So this week, I looked at Paper Girls Volume 1. And I was admittedly, when I realized I was going to be getting to this so late, I was like, I'm just going to do like the first part of Volume 1 and just record the video of like initial impressions, but then I couldn't put it down, and I just kept going, and I wrapped up the whole thing in like, I don't know, half hour or whatever, however long it took. Really recommend it. It was a lot of fun. Paper Girls is like a mashup of Newsies and Stranger Things as now a reference point. I don't know if it was at the time this came out. Brian K. Vaughan is the chief writer on it, by the way. And there's also like some The Time Machine kind of thrown in, H.G. Wells' classic. It basically takes place on November 1st, 1988, the early hours of November 1st. So it's like right after Halloween. There are a lot of kids still kind of out and about post-Halloween revelries. And we follow ultimately a group of 4 paper girls who are out in the early hours delivering papers for the local Cleveland-based newspaper. And after, running into some bullies and kind of, fending them off, and kind of coming together as this little pairing of 4 people, they kind of split up, to kind of cover more ground. And, so you have 2 go off over here, 2 go off over here. One of the groups gets, accosted and loses, like, their walkie-talkie and gets attacked. And so the other pairing goes to join them, and almost immediately gets like wrapped up into this weird science fiction tale of these monsters that have kind of come, and we see them. We're introduced to people kind of speaking in a foreign language, which is very reminiscent to like the Futurama language. If you are familiar with that show, they over the lifespan of the TV show, they came up with actually 2 languages, both of them kind of like just images, symbols, that one of the languages is like a direct one-to-one comparison to the alphabet, and then the other one was like some other formula on top of that you had to take other things into account as well. Smarter people than me went and solved it and figured it out, so you can just kind of find out like the translator. I am super curious to see who has done that for this language, because there are, I think, some identifiable enough kind of speech bubbles that's like, oh, I know they're saying this here, so we can use that to figure out what those symbols mean and kind of build out that. That's me getting super nerdy and really wanting to know what those characters are saying in the speech bubbles where we're only seeing like the future language effectively, but we don't know if they're from the future. We don't know if they're aliens. We don't know what the deal is kind of when we meet them. And we quickly find out that there are also crazy, like, dinosaur-ish monsters and, like, a different faction from the future that are coming in. So there's, like, this kind of intergenerational war, as is described later on in the series, has kind of, like, traveled back to 1988 into this small Cleveland town, and it's just like people are getting abducted, and we don't know if they're abducted or they're just being flat out killed. We don't know what's going on, but these girls are kind of all wrapped up in it. Somebody thinks it's like the rapture has come, and so she's trying to basically figure things out, and ready to like die and kill herself because of it. And one of the girls ultimately gets shot in kind of a tussle, and so there's like an added sense of urgency trying to get her to some kind of help, and all these girls are like 12, 13, somewhere in there, so they can't, they're just kind of, they end up driving, but they're normally out on their bikes, while this kind of like, again, kind of weird like war is happening around them, but they are completely like oblivious to why or what, and we as the audience even aren't really aware of what's going on. There are like clues to kind of key us in that like some of these things from the future have a very noticeable Apple logo to them. So, you know, in theory, there's like iPhone tech gone amok or something like that, and there's a character in here who kind of pitches an old man. Don't know who he is, but it wouldn't surprise me if it is like based on a real person-ish thing, kind of a future hippie character, and he kind of seems to be put forward as like the leader of that segment of people, whereas like the aliens that we met initially were kind of the teenagers of their era, also kind of dealing with deformity, and so they were kind of covered in rags, and that was why the girls thought they were monsters at first. Anyway, lots of really fun stuff going on in here. Like I said, it is very reminiscent to me of Stranger Things, which obviously I imagine this came first, but there's a ton of like 80s references, so it's definitely playing on a sense of nostalgia to being set in that time period. And ultimately, this set of like 5, I think, issues ends with the girls seemingly thrust into the future, and one of them meeting kind of their future self. So I'm really excited now to kind of dive more into this. It was a lot of fun. I wasn't expecting to like consume the whole thing kind of all in one go tonight, but I'm glad I did, and yeah, it was a lot of fun. So I am super interested to see where Paper Girls goes from here. So those are my thoughts, kind of like right off the cuff, of Paper Girls Volume 1. Let me know if you have read the series and if you're a fan, and if I should stick with it and keep going. I'm already planning on it, but let me know if it takes a drastic turn, and maybe I'll find something else to look at. But those are my thoughts on Paper Girls. Let me know yours in the comments below. As always, I've been your host, Trevor Starkey from TrevorTrove.com. You can follow me at SnarkyStarkey on Twitter. And until next time, from here at the Trove, treasure your friends.